Well, before we get to the point where, Kitty and Oppie get together and have a child, we of course meet Florence Pugh, Jean Tatlock, a local commie and psychiatrist. And they sort of fall in lust, but not quite love, and start an affair. They have this extraordinarily funny sex scene in which they read.
This is the one that I would like to fact check with Kai Bird in terms of historical accuracy, which is mid-fuck. Florence Pugh hops off, goes over to the bookshelf, checks out all of the shelves and, the offerings.
This isn't something you guys do?
Me?
Yeah, mid-coitus.
Yeah, but I usually do the "you cut these guys loose" speech from A Few Good Men. And when it went bad,
she pulls a book off the shelf.
Sure. Happens to be the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. Written in Sanskrit. Oppie can read it. She mounts him again.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, what, Chris?
Well, Charlie Rose. He says, I am become death, destroyer of worlds. Or now I am become death, destroyer of worlds.
Right. Which is a phrase that Oppenheimer famously did intone at a certain point when he realized the power of the bomb.
Yeah, when he did the test.
Yes. And it was a choice. It was a choice that Christopher Nolan made about the collision between sex and death in our culture. And I enjoyed it. Huge fan of Florence Pugh. Was it a bit absurd? Of course it was. Did I laugh a little bit while watching it? I was sitting next to Andy Greenwald. He gave me a big old elbow right in the chest when this scene happened. I think that,
I'll never get over that scene. A friend of mine compared it to the Munich sex scene.
Yes.
And I thought that was apt. And it's a choice. It's memorable. To quote my husband, movies. And it is very movies.
Yeah. It's the only place you can do something like that.
The thing
don't do it in real life.
He doubles down.
Yeah.
He doubles down.
Yeah.
He brings it back.
There is another sex scene later in the film in which Jean Tatlock is astride him whilst being interrogated by Jason Clarke's character.
It's a vision.
Sure.
But it's a vision that involves her just showing up in a conference room. They're both naked. But the camera shows more of her nakedness.
Yeah.
And then she locks eyes with Emily Blunt.
So obviously, I almost said Oppenheimer's portrayal of women, but that actually is a part of what I was going to say. Nolan has come under fire over the years for his portrayal of women, including by me. I think he's got a wife problem. I've said that before. This movie very well could be clarified as having a wife problem. In fact, you actually mentioned that, Chris, right after we saw the film. You were like, man, he's going to get killed for this again. Seeing it a second time, I'll give you my interpretation of this.
Yeah.
The decision to make this a subjective point of view film from Oppenheimer's perspective, when we see the movie in color, it is through Oppenheimer's eyes largely. That's what we're meant to believe. It's just a communication of how he views women, which is that he does not view them seriously and he discards them. And Jean Tatlock, and not just Jean Tatlock, but there's a critical sequence early on where he goes to a communist gathering with his brother and his brother's girlfriend. And he treats his brother's girlfriend like shit. And the camera lingers on his brother's girlfriend a couple of times to show the contempt that she has for Oppenheimer because of his disrespect for her and his interest in men and big ideas. And I don't know if that necessarily completely eliminates the Nolan criticisms, but it's a pretty purposeful choice here, which is that, even later in the film, we learn that he's been having an affair with Ruth Tolman, the wife of another scientist and academic. And
I mean, at some
he's
point,
just discarded her as well. And this is who this person is.
Gross calls him a womanizer at some point.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it doesn't seem that. I mean, like, it seems like he's got like a kind of 1950s batting average of like women. It's like 2,
Yeah. Would you say that was a simpler time?
No, but I just mean, like, I don't know that the movie does a good job depicting him being a womanizer, though I take the character's word for it. My response to you in the subjective, I don't think that Kitty is served well by the pace of the movie, because I think that that's a character that changes drastically over the course of time and that's not like really served well, like for better or for worse. And I also think probably you could make the argument that like Josh Hartnett's character has more complexity on screen and articulates more, has like a fuller character in some ways than his wife, than Kitty does in some ways. I think Kitty seems like a very complicated and interesting person. Wound up later in life marrying Robbie after Oppenheimer died.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
But
I mean, what the movie doesn't really do a very good job of communicating to you is that she was a scientist. She was a biologist.
Yeah,
she was a botanist. She was an incredibly intelligent person,
right?
Who ultimately found herself confined to a domesticated 1950s American lifestyle.
Which is also one line. Yeah. She says, I'm a biologist. I got upgraded to housewife. And then they get swept along. She gets pregnant very quickly. They get married. I mean, it could be subjective. I get it. But it's plainly a bummer to watch Emily Blunt, one of the best actresses like working right now, in my opinion, just not get to do anything.
Yeah, if you want to see,
like it's not even like I don't care about Nolan's other movies. I mean, I do, but we don't need to do Nolan problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be subjective, but it just what a waste.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's kind of what it is. And great, he was a womanizer. But I don't. That's fine.
I think it's up for debate whether or not she gets to have a kind of pride of place in the final act, which you didn't like as much. She obviously is interrogated at the end of the film and she's the only character who effectively stands up to Roger Robb in the movie. And then,
right, but she's correcting his grammar.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and then
it is a kangaroo court.
Then the one old guy is like, great job. Like, okay.
And then she also obviously gets to reject Teller when eventually Oppenheimer is awarded something by Lyndon B. Johnson. And she... it's one of the final shots of the film is her rejecting those who undermined her life partner. Which, is that enough? I don't know. Was it enough for any woman in 1950 to be forced into this lifestyle because of our expectations around gender? I think it's debatable. It feels very different to me than, say, the portrayal of Dom Cobb's dead wife in Inception.